Do you ever get the idea that sometimes like what you have is so good that because it's so good, people have no choice to ignore it? That's how I feel about the debt payoff strategies that I teach on this channel. Like this is so good that most people have to ignore it. And the reason I think this is because I've been teaching this for about 3 years. I've known it for about I think about 8 or so. And every time I try to teach it offline, nobody's really that interested in learning about it. So I just come to the conclusion, oh man, your life must be like you don't need this, It's I guess you're not in debt or something like that, It's kind of like you don't need to teach people dieting tricks where nobody's obese, but I think metaphorically we live in a society where people are obese, but when you tell them like, weight loss strategies that are really really easy that don't require any effort, they don't want to hear it because that means that they have to admit that they're obese, if that makes sense. Right? And I think that's what happens with debt payoff too, right? In fact, I actually saw this comment posted today on my channel, um, and I thought it was really interesting. So let's just read it. I taught this method to 3 people, and none of them tried it, despite the fact that I showed them in detail how I've paid off my own debts and how it would help their specific situations. It's frustrating, but I did my part, and I get it. I think I'm there because I don't know a single person in real life where I taught, where I showed it to them, fresh eyes, and they were like, "Whoa, how do I do this?" It's only a select few, a select chosen. So if you're listening to this video, just know you are the chosen. Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started with paying off debt using something called the velocity method. And so, what's the first step to creating a debt payoff plan? It's a budget. I was going to say, what's the first step to creating a budget? It's creating a budget. And I was like, I caught myself there. But what's the first step to paying off a debt? Whatever. I can't even speak today. What's the first step to paying off debt? It's creating a budget. Okay. Why? Because your budget is your debt attack plan. Okay. So you have your income, your expenses, your leftover checking and savings, and then in your expense breakdown, you list every single debt that you have, right? You have to list every single debt and its associated payment. Okay. And then in the last line item, what you do is you just give an average figure of your monthly expenses that are not tied to debt. Things like food, gas, insurance. So even if you were debt free, you would still have to pay for it, right? And so here's a quick way or a quick summary if to figure out if what I'm going to talk about is going to help you or not. If you become debt free today, right? Let's say magically you become debt free today. Will your life feel like it'll be better than it is now? And if the answer is yes, this will help you. Okay. Or 99.999% help you, kind of like those germ commercials where they say they get rid of the 99.999% of germs. However, if life is still hard even after you're debt free, this is not going to help you because this is a debt payoff strategy. Whereas even if you were debt free and you're still negative, that's an income problem, right? That's not a debt problem. That's an income problem. Okay. Now let me restart here. Okay. We're just going to restart, put all of our debts in place. And so here's what we're going to assume, right? Even with the same income and the same expenses, we're going to use this amazing debt payoff method that I have called the velocity method because we had a better name for it, but the state of Illinois hated it and fined another YouTuber $20,000 for using that name in connection with their business. So we don't use it anymore. Okay. But we'll now call it the velocity method. I like the previous name better. It had the, you ever watched the movie The Founder where like the McDonald's brothers are asking Ray Kroc like in the bathroom, like, why did you want McDonald's? Why not just create a new hamburger store and call it Crocs? This is the movie The Founder with Michael Keaton. And he was like, because Crocs doesn't have it. Okay. That's how I sometimes feel about the velocity method. I feel like velocity banking has it, but velocity method, that's just like, that's cool. but it's like Crocs. I want McDonald's, but fortunately, we can't use it, so we'll call it the velocity method. All right. So now here's the secret to the velocity method. I'm going to deconstruct it for you. Okay. So what's the secret to this method? Well, it's just not saving money. Okay. Not saving money rebranded. So now this is a zero, right? And I know this is very shocking to a lot of people because how does average American banking train us to bank? Well, basically, you get paid, you get a bunch of debts, different types of debts, a quote, a mix or a variety of debts, and then you're not expected to really overpay any single one of them, right? And on top of that, whatever's left over, you leave in your checking and savings. Okay. So what's the difference between the left side and the right side? Well, on the left side, we're encouraged to save money, right? It's seen as a responsible thing, even if you're debt free. Or I'm sorry, even if you do have debt, it's seen as the responsible thing. Even if you do have debt, you should save money. Now, if you want to know the best way to pay off debt, it's actually not saving money. And I know I'm saying the obvious, but as Americans, and I use it as a general loose term, as citizens of the world, we're socialized with two things that are actually contradictory ideas. So the first idea is we should pay off debt, right? Look at Dave Ramsey, okay? You know, his whole shtick, his whole show is about paying off debt. But what's his first baby step? Save $1,000. Okay. Well, how do you save $1,000 if you're going to pay off debt? You can't. Right. So that's why a lot of people struggle with that because they're saving money. Saving money is like the struggle bus. Okay. Now, what are we going to do? We're going to move or throw or dump. Every time I use the word dump, I don't know why I'm thinking of Family Guy. I don't know if you ever watched Family Guy. It's been a while since I watched Family Guy, but every time there's an inappropriate word, Peter Griffin's like, dump. Anyways, all right. So now you're going to put all of your money into something called a line of credit. Now, why a line of credit? Because it is the only tool that the bank offers where you could dump all of your money into it and take it out immediately after, right? And this is why many of us are afraid to pay off debt because with the tools that the bank highly promotes, like loans and credit cards, that's something you cannot do, right? So if I have this $5,600 of income and I put all of that income into a credit card or a loan, let's say I put in credit card one, can I put it in credit card, use credit card one to pay credit card two, three, and all these other loans? No. But with a line of credit, we can definitely do that. That's why we use a personal or home equity line of credit, right? Personal or home equity line of credit. And if you have a business, then a business line of credit because a business, it's like, what's the difference between a personal credit card and a business credit card? It's still, there's still credit cards, but one's the name of your business and possibly doesn't appear on your credit report. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to assume we have a line of credit. And this example will make it easy. 8%, $50,000. All right. Now, when you have a lot of debt, and in this case, we got, a good mix of debt. We got 3 credit cards, an auto loan, student loan, and a mortgage. And we don't have that much left over, right? $552 in leftover. Okay. Will the bank give you a line of credit? The answer to that is no, because banks don't lend money to people who need it, right? So the reason why the bank in the beginning lent you all of this debt is because when you were debt free, you didn't need money. When you were debt free, you didn't need money. And so when you start off debt free and you didn't need money, then the bank just little by little, kind of like a, what do you call it? The analogy of the pot of in the frog that gets boiled by water, right? Like you don't crank up the heat immediately. What you do is just kind of slowly turn up the heat till the frog gets boiled in the pot, right? So I don't know if you ever heard that analogy before, where if you try to cook up a frog in a pot and then you turn up the heat immediately, the frog jumps out, right? Whereas if you just slowly turn it up, then you kind of get cooked. Okay. So that's when the bank will lend to you when you slowly turn up the debt. Remember, banks don't lend money to people who need it. Okay. Banks don't lend money to people who need it because people who need money, according to the bank, are bad people because people who need money don't pay you back. Bank knows this from all the gajillions of transactions that they do for however many years that the bank has been an institution. Banks don't lend money to people who need it. Now, I'm just going to quickly address this. So, if the bank doesn't lend you a line of credit here, why do we demonstrate here? Well, it's because it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, well, if you knew about the strategy, you would have never gotten into the situation where you only have $500 left over. And not only that, okay, if you ever look at any of the real life scenarios that we deal with, right, it's actually much more complicated to understand unless you know the basics. So if you take a look right here, this is an actual real life case study of someone who had $4.10 left over in 22 debts and started out with a maxed out line of credit. This is like the most common, not want to say common, typical, more of the typical situations that you see when people are having trouble with debt and they have a line of credit because they treat their line of credit as a maxed out credit card. Actually, let me rephrase that. This is the most extreme situation I've seen. But when I say typical, I mean it's almost like this, but slightly less complicated, right? And so I would rather have you just give you a simple example where you see the benefits of the line of credit. Oh my goodness, I wish I had one, but you won't ever get one. Why? Because banks don't lend money to people who need it. Okay. Now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to increase this number, this cash flow number that looks exactly like the same as this checking and savings. Okay. But the difference between the left side and the right side is that on the left side, we store what's left over in the checking account. On the right side, everything's thrown into a line of credit, and the checking account is not the final destination of our money. Okay. Now, how do we increase this cash flow number? Well, it's easy. What we do is we strategically move debt into a line of credit, and we do this using something called the cash flow index, right? Basic formula of debt divided by the monthly payment, right? Debt divided by the monthly payment. And then, okay, we just rank our debts in this order, smallest to largest. And why do we not pay off this large number first? Well, it's because if we pay this large number first, we're literally giving someone a lot of money for a little bit amount of payment, right? Whereas if we pay off these credit cards, okay, they give us a lot more bang for our buck in terms of cash flow. So I don't know about you. Do you want to pay $265,000 for $1,200 of cash flow, or was it 28,000 for a very similar amount? I think maybe 900 or 1,000, right? So what we're gonna do is take these low numbers. The lower the number, the more bang for our buck we get, and it's really easy. So, and how much is this? 5, 8, 15. And then I'm just going to go ahead and sum it up, and that's 28,000 in credit card debt. And then let's move it into a line of credit. So 280,000. Okay. Now, what happens here? Well, because we just simply did a balance transfer, these payments go to zero. And look at that. Okay, look at that. This $552.60 magically turned to $1,400. And it's true, because I told you, hey, this same income and same expenses, we just shifted some expenses, some of them to a line of credit. And not only that, okay, his final step is you put your entire paycheck into that line of credit, take your expenses out. And so after every single month, the balance should go down about $1,400, right? And so how do we show this? Well, basically it's really easy. You get the previous month's balance plus the previous month's interest minus the cash flow, which is 1475.1. And this is, so now we got to calculate the average daily balance based on the 8% interest rate. So it's not free money, right? Although sometimes I've actually seen demonstrations where I don't think people are correctly calculating the interest. All right, so now what we do is get the average daily balance. So you see this, it's $181. Now think about this, right? If our paycheck is $5,600 and our minimum payment is just going to be around $180, we'll say $200, right? We'll just give a nice round figure. How hard do you think it will be to make the minimum monthly payment? It's really easy because you're dumping the entire $5,600 into that line of credit as an overpayment, right? And then you just take your expenses out, pay your other bills from the line of credit, and then rinse and repeat over and over again, right? Rinse and repeat. So you pay all these other bills from that line of credit, okay? Now, it doesn't mean we stop using credit cards, and I talk about this in another video. We can still use credit cards, right? So as long as these credit cards have been fully paid off, statement balance has been paid off, we just use them and charge them on these $2,000 of personal expenses, whatever we can pay, right? Because a credit card whose statement balance has been paid off is a 1 month free interest loan, right? You swipe, then you wait a month, and then you pay from your line of credit to the credit card, right? So that's one easy way you can delay the interest of paying for your $2,000 a month of expenses. All right, so let's go ahead and get started and just copy and paste this, and this, and now how much? It's 21 months till this debt is paid off. Nice. Nice. All right. So 21 months for 28K. I love it. 21 months and 28K. 3 credit cards. All right. So now we got the auto loan, student loan, and the mortgage. And now we have this loan calculator right here where we could literally put the current month, which is 21 months, and it'll tell us the balance. So 21, 21, 21. Okay. Now this is what we're going to do. We're going to follow the cash flow index. Okay. So a lot of people, I'll tell you what, they focus on the 7% and they'd be like, oh my goodness, 7%. Let's focus on that. No. All right. We're going to think holistically. And so we have this cash flow index. So the lower the number, more bang for your buck. So think about this. Would you pay 14 grand for about 400 or 34 grand about 460? I'm going to pay the 14 grand. Let's get the 400. We get more bang for a buck in terms of cash flow. So let's go ahead and do this. And I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste. Copio and pasto plus 14671.94. And then this is going to be $395, and we see that this is $1,800 of cash flow. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste. All right, and then let's go ahead and do this minus 1870.42. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste. And then we see that in 29 months, right, 29 months, this has been paid off. So 29 months. And then this is going to be 28 plus 22. So that's 50K. Okay. And then now, so in 29 months, let's just do this 29, 29. Now we'll just do this right here. All right. So now we just got 2 more loans. So follow the cash flow index. So if you don't know anything about the ranges of the cash flow index, they have like, certain ranges where 50 and below, or below 50 is usually safe to pay off. 50 to 100 is kind of like caution. And then above 100, it's like, don't pay it off. That's what they say. I have a little bit of a different interpretation of that. But even if we have above 50, if the interest rate is comparable, let's say it's the same or higher, we can safely move it into a line of credit. Now this is 7%. 7 and 8 are close. So even if I move this into a line of credit, yeah, I might be losing a few bucks, but it'll make the demonstration go a little bit faster. But so we'll just move this entire loan into the line of credit, and then plus 32720.9. Okay, so now that we move that student loan balance into the line of credit, let's grab that extra $400. And then now we have $2,000 of cash flow. Look at that. 500 to 2,000 without making more money or getting extra shifts. I love it. All right. So let's go ahead and do that. And then copy and paste. So this is going to be minus 2334.85. Okay. So let's go ahead and copy and paste. And then, all right. Okay. And so now what's next is 44 months. Okay. So now at 44 months, we've eliminated that student loan. And guys, if you want to know how to say student loan in Spanish, it's préstamo estudiantil, I think. Right. So that's 90K. All right. By the way, I was watching this video about like Spain, about how like they're all protesting because nobody can afford housing there, which is really screwed up because I think Spain was taken over by like Airbnb or something, and that really sucks. But then you know what? California is like that too, but nobody seems to be protesting California. I don't really get it, but I think we need to protest a little bit more here. I don't understand how people make it there, but people have like $300,000 salaries in Silicon Valley. So if S hits the fan, we might have to move to a even lower cost state, but we'll see. All right, so now let's go ahead and go here. So this is a mortgage. So at 44 months, 44, what's the current balance of the mortgage? 246,000. Now there's two ways to pay the mortgage, right? So and also think of it like overpaying a credit card, right? There's two ways to actually, I don't know if that's a really good analogy, but let me just kind of go back to the mortgage. Just I may be a little bit delirious just because it's a little bit late right now. But there's two ways that you can pay a mortgage, right? Overpay, I mean. One is just do extra payments. Now, extra payments is the default option that nobody does, right? It's kind of like when your friends tell you that they're going to go to the gym in January because it's the cheapest and they think they're smart. And if I knew you in real life and I told you I loved you and cared for you, and you told me you were going to go to the gym because you truly had the intention of losing weight, but not only that, you thought it was smart to do it in January because you're going to save money, I would say don't do that, right? That's just my opinion because the gym companies know that your people who sign up for the gym when it's the cheapest in New Year's are most likely not going to go, right? They're most likely not going to go. And it's the same thing with loans. You know why the interest rate of a loan is less than a line of credit? It's because the bank knows that you're not going to overpay a loan. See, they don't call it the minimum payment, they just call it the monthly payment, right? Like with the credit card, they call it a minimum payment because it's more likely that you will overpay, hence they have to increase the interest rate, right? But with a loan, just because it's a one-way street, they don't call it a minimum payment. They just call a monthly payment. See, it's all just word games. But that's why they can have low interest rates on these loans because they know you're likely to not overpay, right? It's the default option that nobody does. So what we can do is we just use a line of credit as a bridge, right? In the case of a 30-year mortgage, just move small amounts of the loan into the line of credit. Okay. What figure are going to use? We'll just use, $6,000, whatever your income, assuming that you have enough cash flow and you're paying this debt off last, just move a small amount into the line of credit and pay it off. Okay. If you want to see how this looks like in real life, I'll just show you. You're moving $6,000 of the loan. So I'm just going to do this plus 6,000 loan into the line of credit. And look, it gets paid off in 2 months. Okay. And then we just rinse and repeat over and over again. And then it gets paid off in 3 months or 2 more months, right? So we just do it one more time and so on and so forth. Okay. All right. So now we see that money getting paid off relatively quickly. And so if you want to see the exact calculation, I'll just show you right here. So all I got to do is just put in the numbers. Is it my income still 5,500? Let me just quickly check. 5,600. Okay. 5,600. All right. And then we see what is the current balance of the loan, 246,937.89. So 246,937.89 gets paid off in 6.6 years. And I know what some of you are thinking is because some of you are like, oh my goodness, it's a 4% loan with the 8% line of credit. Are you insane? And I'm going to tell you that this interest rate, the effect of it is pretty negligible. And you might not believe me, right? But let's say that I change this into 1% line of credit. Did you see how that went from 35 grand to 33 grand? Now, obviously, the lower the interest rate, the more or the less. Wait, let me say that. I'm totally delirious right now because it's late. But the lower the interest rate, the less you're obviously going to pay, right? 8% is 35 grand. Oopsie. 1% is 33 grand. All right. Like, folks, I mean, if you that's a blip on the bank's balance sheet, right? Now, if you want to save the most amount of money, you want me to give you some advice, okay? Never borrow money. Never borrow money, and you will never pay a dime in interest or origination fees. Right? That's okay. Now, the reason why we borrow money is because it's for convenience, right? And it helps us manage our cash flow. Okay, because we have to pay a lot of money for an itty bitty amount of payment. Right? Or actually, we were able to buy things that cost a lot for an itty bitty amount of payment, but the trade-off is a long period of time. Okay. But my point is this: don't freak out about the interest rate, right? Because you can play around with this. I mean, let's do 0%. 0 and 1 are almost exactly the same. If I do 0 to 8, it's a negligible difference. Now, there's a really big difference between putting the entire loan into a line of credit and doing a partial payoff, right? Incremental partial payoffs, or I like to call them sweeps. And so let me just show you this. If I move the entire loan into the line of credit, notice how this turns to 87 grand, right? But if we got a 1% line of credit and replace the entire mortgage because it's lower than the interest rate of the loan, look how little we pay, right? So a loan replacement and then versus doing incremental sweeps are two different things. Like if the interest rate of the loan is higher than the line of credit, oh, I would do a loan replacement all day, every day, right? I would do it all day, every day. But if the interest rate of the line of credit is higher than the loan, then we just do it in small chunks, right? Because one of the things that principles that we adhere to is we don't segregate our income. We put all of our income into one place. And it's one of those culty things that I tell you to do so that you're focused on paying off debt, right? Don't segregate your income, okay? All right. So what do I mean by that? Well, income segregation is simply your paycheck coming in, getting split all over the place, and then you put the leftover in checking and savings. When we're doing this velocity method, we're just dumping all of our money into one place and making sure, and when it's in one place, it's just a lot more effective as long as we follow the guidelines that we talked about, right? So let me just go here, 6.6 years. So we're just gonna write that down as a milestone. And then there's going to be 44 divided by 12 plus 6.6. And then it's going to be 10.27 years. And then we are debt free. Oh my goodness. We are debt free. All right. Well, that's it for today, folks. Korean Lanta mentorship. It's late for me and I'm really delirious. But what do you think? Do you think this debt payoff method is so good that people just can't help but ignore it because then their whole life becomes a lie? Or their self, what do you call it? Um, their self idealization is a lie because then they'd have to admit that they're broke and learn about debt payoff strategies. I don't know. Maybe that's why you can't get teaching selling fitness is hard for the vast majority of the population. Then they have to admit that they're unhealthy or overweight. All right. Okay. Well, that's it, folks. This is Freelance Mentorship. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Whoa, it's a 30-minute video. It's a long one today. All right. See you next time.